a man who is comfortable with very little information. Karabo Songo, the founder and chief executive of Olive Communications. He is not only a creative marketer at heart, but he is also a driven pioneer who is always searching to improve the way marketing is done. Join me as I tear a page out of this pioneer's ambitious drive. Have you guys ever been fired?
I will always equate my success to my level of personal growth.
Karabo, how are you doing?
I'm very good.
I've been waiting for this interview. I'm very good, thank you.
So have I.
Good, makes the two of us. Karabo, you've worked for some reputable advertising agencies in your past. And obviously at some point you realize that this is not what you want to do anymore and that you want to establish your own thing. Tell me about that day, that turnaround, that turning point. What happened that day?
I think it was more than a day. I think you get an idea in your head and you mouth through it. You think about how you want to do it. And then you begin to imagine what it would be like. And you fall in love with the idea. Then the next step before that specific day is making it a reality where all the planning has to stop and you have to execute.
Make it a reality.
Yeah, for me it was a very stressful time, I think.
Okay.
I think resignations in their nature are very stressful from any type of career. Mine was particularly sensitive in the sense that I was playing a very crucial role within the agency that I was working in at that specific time.
What role was that?
It was the role of an account manager, and then I was seeking actually to be a shareholder of that specific agency.
Oh my!
And yeah, I'd seen a niche and I'd been trying to sell it to management, and no one was seeing that gap, and I chose to address it myself.
Wow, okay. So it wasn't that you left out of frustration. You identified a gap in the marketplace and you were just trying to fill that gap.
Yes. And I think also to up my own performance, what was frustrating me more was why would we try to excel in areas where our competitors have already done a fantastic job, you know? We should be looking at breaking new ground and owning that piece of ground. So that was my thinking.
And your agency now, Olive Communications, I've had the pleasure of actually walking into your offices, and I've identified there were quite a few people working for your agency, and you've also got quite reputable accounts under your belt, SAB, Nestle, Transnet, etc. The list goes on. But I'm sure in the beginning it wasn't like that. I'm sure there were challenges right at the beginning. So tell me about those challenges.
So there's a very interesting story where I had one specific project when I resigned. And after I resigned, the client fired our agency because there was a conflict of interest in us working with my past employer. And then one thing led to another, and then we were dismissed. So I had a choice to make at that point in time to say, do I literally continue or do I stop and then go back to the corporate marketplace? But I felt our USP was strong enough to survive, and that's how we started. Actually, our first job of our group was actually designing a banner. That's how small. It was for Albany, for Tiger Brands. The client was desperate. They called every agency they know. It was late on a Friday afternoon. It was about 5:30. They needed the design files on a Sunday, and nobody was willing to do it.
Except you guys.
When I got the call, I was like, I am so ready. It's not even fun.
And now Tiger Brands is actually one of your accounts.
Yes, we grew that account from literally under 10,000 to millions of rands annually, and that is the true nature of entrepreneurship. I think all you need is just that breakthrough, just a gap. And once you get into that gap, you have to make it work because there's no going back. You know?
On the account aspect or brands, if you like, have you guys ever been fired as Olive Communication by any one of the brands?
A number of times.
Oh, wow.
That is the industry.
Okay.
I think marketing in itself it's quite a subjective career in the sense that creativity is aligned with what the personal preferences of an individual actually are. So what you find is that every 3 years or so, as management changes, as teams change, you have this change that comes through an organization, and maybe they might feel that their brand custodian, which is the agency at that time, is a little stagnant, and they might want to bring in new blood.
You know, Karabo, I don't think you know this about me, but I actually worked for an advertising agency back in my day. We focused on below the line, like you guys. The company didn't do so well. So basically, what I'm asking you is, what makes yours so unique?
Look,
because there are others out there.
Yeah. Without giving away trade secrets, the one thing that makes it work for us, below the line, is about results. It's about business results. So once you start looking and breaking down the science of marketing, I think what everybody's quite familiar with is communications.
Yes.
So these are the ads, the final pieces of work that you see on the different media platforms. Where we start is we start with the business. So what are the business objectives? Are they sound? Do they make sense? Are they achievable? Then we drive those business objectives into marketing objectives. And then we spend a lot of time drilling into these marketing objectives, aligning them with business reality.
And I think what you're saying is making a lot of sense, because I was a young person then, or a young blood, if you may. And I don't think I was quite exposed to that whole entire value chain. In fact, I think the agency itself didn't focus on what you are talking about, from business to marketing objectives, and then right through. So I think very much so. There's a lot of tactical focus that happens, and then the bigger strategic picture is never really taken into account. So that's what you guys pride yourself in.
Yes.
Love
reporting to shareholders.
Would you say the industry, the advertising industry, is cutthroat? Everyone says that. Why do you think they say that?
I think, look, services businesses in themselves are very cutthroat. Firstly, we build very little value. So if you think of asset base, in terms of services, so other industries have the pleasure of building asset bases. So if you run a mine, you're going to own land, you're going to own machinery, you're going to own a number of very valuable things. So should the operation go wrong, then you have these things to fall back on. What they also do is that they give you a competitive edge. So not everybody can afford 300 million rand worth of machinery, land, etc., and operations. So that's why it's called a high barrier kind of industry. So when you look at the advertising industry, it's low barrier entry. So if you've got the skill, you can start the business, which makes it quite subjective. So why it's cutthroat is that you've got a lot of new entrants all the time. You've got people who have been staying in that specific industry, and that's what makes it cutthroat. Why I necessarily don't think it's cutthroat is because we've got very low innovation. So if you think of marketing as an art, as a science, we innovate very little. I mean, the latest innovation, has been social media in marketing. But if you think of the hype prior to social media, we've only had in the late 80s or so TV, which was big. Then from there we went on to radio. Now we've got social media. And if you look at the gaps between the innovation, we innovate very little. So is it cutthroat? Absolutely not. But if it's not going to be cutthroat for you, the big question becomes, what next big thing do you present to the marketing industry? And how do you drive these products to literally change marketplaces?
Karabo, I'm very interested in understanding what is Olive Communications' rise to fame? What is the best campaign that you guys have ever run that we know of?
I think, look, in terms of best campaign, I would find it very difficult to choose. But there's a couple that you might know of. I mean, if we think of Castle Light, the Kanye West
Oh, yes.
whole activation, but just the cold proposition, and the many different fun things that we brought to the country in terms of making Castle Light work as a beverage brand.
Yes.
So the message was bigger than the coolness. It was just delivering business results, and I think there's that, and there's other pieces of work. But
Perfect. Then I have an exciting challenge for you.
Yes.
Picture this. I'm a global brand looking to establish a footprint in South Africa, and I'm targeting the black consumer market. In less than a minute, convince me that you are, the right provider to put my brand out there.
So, if you're a new entrant and you are getting into the marketplace, the biggest thing that I would drive is two major things. I would sample the hell out of your product, get it into people's hands, and I would also drive availability of your product. The biggest basic principle is that you've got to have your product in the marketplace for people to trial out. There's no use driving consumers to look for your product if it's not available. So what we look at is looking at putting your product into the trade and really driving it hard and making sure that it's available. And the second thing is for people to try your product without having a lot of risk associated with that. And this is why businesses drive free sampling. So the risk is very low. The only risk that I have as a consumer is to literally dedicate my time, attention, and of course my 5 senses, whether it be taste, touch, smell, whatever it is, and associate myself with your specific product for that point in time.
Okay, got the account.
Thank you. Now here's my invoice.
He honestly keeps us calm no matter what.
He's hungry, he's ambitious, and I believe that he has the vision to take the business forward in the next coming 10 years.
The first thing that really impressed me about him was one, the level of focus, determination.
He's quite a go-getter. He knows what he wants and he fights for it.
So, advertising, African exposed advertising, you in advertising, it has its challenges.
Yes.
What are some of the challenges that you've experienced as a young black man?
Sure. Where do I start? Look, I think the biggest challenge that I've experienced is the challenge of discovering myself as a young black man within society. So we've got various definitions, and black people as a race are on a transition course. So if you can imagine a couple of 100 years ago within society, our relevance was at a certain low level. Now we are transitioning to being this beautiful beings where we are in love with ourselves and we are psychologically convinced that we are worthy of greatness. Now this journey of greatness and where we are going that in itself is a challenge for you to keep up with the journey. So as a black man, you've got to decide where are you in that journey and who are you going to become in the long term. And for me, that has been my biggest challenge, because I will always equate my success to my level of personal growth. So I believe that the more I grow myself, psychologically, emotionally, in whatever sense, the more I will be successful. And it goes on and on and on.
There's a lot of people who have great ideas. Very few are willing to implement those ideas. How did you get from concept generation to implementing your own idea, which is establishing your own business? I find that people are usually stuck. Every day I have an idea, in the shower I have an idea, while I'm driving the car I have an idea. But I'm not counting my businesses right now,
Look,
so what sets us apart?
what you have is, I call it the analysis paralysis syndrome. So people analyze themselves and their ideas to such an extent that they never actually implement. One of the things that I'm extremely comfortable with is working with little information. So when I started my group, I understood the opportunity. but I did not need to have all the information to understand how I'm going to build a R1 billion business in order to start this business. So what I did is then I sought to understand and seek to solve the very next problem, the next problem, the next problem, the next problem. And that's really where I started implementing, and that's how I've sort of approached every other business that I've ever built.
Now, Karabo, you're from Limpopo?
Yes.
My homeboy.
The controversial province.
You know what I'm saying? But you are specifically from Makopane, yes?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
I grew up in Polokwane.
Oh, okay.
Which high school did you go to?
I went to Waterberg High School.
Okay, which is? In,
it's in Mokopane as well.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Were you an academic, a prefect maybe, or were you part of the first team? Because you know, there's always that thing that if you're a prefect, you're gonna get somewhere in life, you know. So I'm trying to dispel that thing now.
I was involved in a number of things while I was in school.
Okay.
So I was the deputy head boy of the institution. I was also head of the debating committee of the school.
Okay.
I was head of the swimming team. So yeah, I did a lot of accolades while I was at school.
Okay. And I'm not seeing a ring on your finger, so I'm not to assume that it's still coming. Or for the ladies out there, what is happening in that space?
I think the ring will come when the time is right.
Okay.
For now, yeah.
You're still living life.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
But I have to say this. I think that part of success is knowing what kind of relationships you want to be in, and how you want to be supported in your life. I think there's a theory that you will ultimately become the individual that is influenced by the top 5 people in your life.
Who's influencing you right now?
There's been a number of people. I mean, when I look at my brother, when I look at my mother, when I look at my partner, when I look at various people, you know, when I look at my younger sister, for example, I get quite excited. The more I begin to understand myself, the more I understand how they have in turn influenced me. You know? When I look at like my upset father, you know, when you know, it's those kind of things. In hindsight, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I never knew that my inner being has been influenced by some of the things that these people have done as I've grown up to make me who I am today.
Sure. You spoke about something quite touchy, your absent father.
Yes.
I'm assuming that he hasn't played a role in your life.
No, he hasn't.
He hasn't.
Yes.
Is there yearning for that? Or have you just decided, you know what, I'm going to live my life with the people that I've come to know and love? So
in my case, I've had a lot of father figures who've really helped define who I am today. And thank God that I've had that, so that it can suppress the need that every single man, I think male, has for a father figure in their lives. And in my case, I've been fortunate in the sense that the guys that have played that role have been successful in their own right.
Okay. Karabo, where do you see yourself in a couple of years' time? What do you want to do with your life outside of, you know, establishing different businesses? What else do you want to do with your life?
So a lot of what I want to do is really drive thinking within the African continent. My whole goal really with the organizations that I run is I want to be in a space where I'm able to influence people to drive more within the economic space. So when you think of marketing and advertising as a whole, it has a much bigger job to do. It has a job where one can make people believe that they can have fantastic products, have fantastic businesses, change the environment that they're in. And that's really the type of work that I want to do.
I went to a marketing boot camp recently, and this guy said, think American, act South African. What do you think about that?
I have my special statement that I always make.
Yes.
The great job that America has done is instill confidence in its people. Even the hobo on the street is proud of being the best hobo
Yes,
on that street.
patriotic.
It's like he's like, yeah,
he's like,
this
"My- this is
America,
my spot,"
we're gonna
you know?
make it. This is my spot. This is how I roll. But if you think of this whole concept of confidence, what I believe that even when you look at guys like Thabo Mbeki, when he spoke of his South African dream, I am an African. If you look at his statement and some of the verses that he goes into, the depth of where he talks about the psyche of the average South African or of the average African. Can we actually do it? What power does an African have to actually change the continent? That is really that sort of space that I'm really passionate about. Some psychologists talk about most Africans actually have an innate need to fail. You know, and it's
Africans
scary.
have an innate need to fail.
Although we talk about success, we are more comfortable with failure.
Yes.
Because we can explain it better. You know, we have much more to support the failure, so we can say no, but the governments are not performing.
Yes.
Our country is underdeveloped, etc., etc. We have much more facts to support failure, and we don't realize the way we think about ourselves that we then take these factors and then we create the reasons to actually fail, and it's much more comfortable. So we end up being mediocre because we've got much more substance to support that fact rather than to support the success.
Am I right in saying that you are not the kind of guy that wakes up at 6:30 in the morning and goes home at 5:30 in the afternoon? Tell me, what is a day like? What is a day like in your space?
So I think one of the greatest blessings that I've had from my entrepreneurship journey, and somewhat the little type of success that I do have, is I get to live a very dynamic life, you know.
Okay.
So I'm not a morning person, so I don't like waking up early at all.
Okay.
So I'm generally in the office at a very much late morning, but I love working late at night. So I would typically go in late morning and I would work through all the hours of the evening, and I have different types of days. There are days where I'm in meetings all day. There are days where I'm in interviews all day. Sometimes when I'm feeling a little lazy, which happens, you know, you just get to a day you're not feeling the magic and you need a little bit of inspiration. I would go out on long lunches with my team. You know, when we are unproductive as a team, I love for us to get together in a fun environment and just talk. You know, just talk. You know, talk about subject matters in careers. Talk about personal life. Communicate. Open the lines. Get familiarity with one another. Because where that helps really is when tough times come, we call on what I like to call the emotional bank balance of the relationship.
Wow.
When,
emotional bank balance.
Absolutely. When it's time to withdraw, that emotional bank balance. Some withdrawals are big, some are small. But the emotional bank balance of the relationship just gives us the opportunity to then continue further and to trust that, you know, I had a really good conversation with someone last week, and if we fight next week, I do believe that that person has my best interest at heart, and that's what really builds great teams over time. You know,
Welcome to Olive Communications. We're a marketing and advertising agency, and this is our space. Olive's vision is really to become one of the top leading marketing and communications groups in Africa, really focusing on your black consumer market. So the focus would be on price, product, distribution, promotion within that specific target market, and leading in bringing innovation and insight on that specific market throughout the many years that will be around to the world of marketing.
What is the definition of ambition in your mind?
So ambition in my mind is it's an ongoing ability to push the envelope. So when you set yourself certain goals, and when you reach those goals, you do not become complacent, you then set the next set of goals, and then you keep on growing in that form of fashion. And true ambition comes from having a very solid plan of how you're going to achieve those goals. So you often hear people saying, I have a dream, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Are you attaching numbers to those dreams? Are you attaching a timeline to those dreams? The truly ambitious people have a way of filtering down their thoughts and putting their thoughts in a very clear-cut manner of defining it, and then being able to measure themselves on a quarterly, annually, however you choose to measure yourself. How far am I from these goals?
Lastly, who are you playing in your car, out of interest?
On my way here?
Yes.
I was playing some Keith Sweat.
Keith Sweat? Wow, really?
Yeah. I go back.
You go way back.
I go way back.
All right, Karabo, it's been
cool.
a pleasure. I've loved talking to you today. I really hope that everyone else watching this is going to be as inspired as I was today. And I really hope that we continue talking on the side, because that dream versus visionary thing, I need to work on that. I really need to work on that.
And thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to share some thoughts.